Okay, you all saw this kind of video before. Comparing soldiers from different universes isn't new. Who has the best army? Who has the best special forces? Who has the best super soldiers? Who has the best navy? And so on, and so on, and so on. We all saw it a dozen times over. So, how is this video any different? Well, firstly, I will be comparing fire warriors of the Tau Empire to clone troopers of a galactic republic. To those who are not in the know, Tau Empire is the weakest faction in Warhammer 40k, and the Grand Army of the Republic, with their clone legions, is considered one of the most elite armies in Star Wars universe. I think it might be fun to compare the soldiers of the weakest faction in one universe to the ideal image of a soldier from another. And I do mean soldiers specifically. If I go into vehicles, battlesuits, special forces, command structure, we would sit here for hours. But if you want to hear my thoughts on how they compare to each other, just comment below this video. I may create more videos like this one. Now, the second thing is, I want to show you how surprisingly similar fire warriors and clone troopers are. And I mean extremely similar. It's downright uncanny how many similarities there are between them. Let's start with a small overview. The Grand Army of the Republic consists of genetic clones of the greatest bounty hunter of that age, Jango Fett, a man who, in legends, managed to kill 6 Jedi with his bare hands. Impressive feat, to say the least. In the galaxy of uncounted trillions of souls, there are few non-Force sensitives who have potential to match a Jedi. Even fewer who can outmatch them. Jango was one of those people. And each clone trooper carries that legacy in their very DNA. Of course, clones aren't perfect replicas of Jango. Kaminoans accelerated their aging and tampered with their genetics so that they would be more obedient towards their commanders. The clones are trained from day one and are considered ready for service after around a decade. Kaminoans also modified their DNA to create variants of clone troopers who'd specialize in a given thing. Be it piloting a starfighter, being a trooper, a medic, an engineer, or taking a role of a commanding officer. Not to mention specially modified clone commandos and ARC troopers. In both canon and legends, they were trained by bounty hunters and mercenaries, many of which were Mandalorians, which led to clones adopting much of this warrior culture. They were indoctrinated to be totally loyal to the Republic and ready to give their lives for it. In fact, many clones saw themselves as expendable soldiers, despite how well trained they were. The clones were deployed serving under command of the Jedi Knights of the Republic against the droid army of a confederacy of independent systems. And despite being outnumbered and outgunned, they were a key factor in Republic's victory. So, as we can see, overall, a very impressive army, created from the DNA of a man who was probably one in the 100 trillion example of a person who could actually match a Jedi in a fight and win. They faced an overwhelming enemy and won one of the most important conflicts in the history of the galaxy. The war that led to transformation of a galactic republic that stood for 1000 years into galactic empire. They were also responsible for wiping out the Jedi Order during execution of Order 66. Truly an army with a dark legacy, but also a symbol of loyalty towards the idea of the Republic. Now, let's look at their opponent. Fire Warriors are ground troops of the Tau Empire, loyal to the ideology of a greater good. All Fire Warriors are members of a Fire caste, a subspecies of a Tau race. They are more muscular, aggressive, and decisive compared to other castes. They originate from plains of the Tau homeworld, Te-Au, where they lived as hunters and warriors. Fire Warriors were bred to be soldiers. Literally. In Tau society, reproduction is controlled and mandated by the Elemental Council and ruling caste of Ethereals. Weak strains are wiped out or die out, when the strong reproduce either naturally or with help of artificial wombs. From the moment of birth, members of a Fire caste are trained to be soldiers. Tau have shorter lifespan than humans and mature around twice as fast, so it takes between 9 and 10 years for a member of a Fire caste to mature and gain the rank of Shasla, a warrior, and be ready to be deployed in combat. Through the years of training, each recruit will be evaluated for their skills, abilities, and most importantly, a niche that they occupy. In fact, each recruit is encouraged to find their own small specialization, to find their place in so-called machine. Recruits are trained to face the environments of different worlds and myriad of enemies of a greater good. Inside combat domes, they will face against cybernetic replicas of their enemies, their cousins in the Earth caste, working hard to fully replicate the experience of fighting against different foes that stand against the Tau Empire. Orcs, guardsmen, space marines, even some allied species of the Tau Empire are used in training, artificially created creatures of fake flesh and metal. The Tau can also be put into dreamlike state and go through simulations where they can not only train without realizing that they are still in training, but experience pain or even death for the first time. Legendary Commander Farsight proved his dedication to the greater good and the Tau Empire by sacrificing his life more than once in those simulations. Battlesuits, also known as Hero's Mantle, are a symbol of a Fire caste. Each suit is piloted by a veteran of a Fire caste and grants its pilot surprising agility and terrifying firepower. Each sept, a region of the Tau Empire, has its own variant of the Tau culture and traditions. The same goes for the Fire Warriors, who reflect their worlds of origin as well as in what given sept specialize in. This can include having access to more experimental weaponry because of the presence of Earth caste military research facilities, or have experience in dealing with extreme environment like plasma storms that burn the surface of their worlds. Fire Warriors specialize in ranged combat and are trained to keep their enemies at a distance. Their doctrine and training is focused around small, mobile, hard-hitting strike forces known as cadres. Selflessness is a virtue. After all, the greater good of all may demand a sacrifice of the few. The Fire castes faced all threats of the Milky Way galaxy, and more often than not, proven to be worthy foes. From great campaigns like Damocles' Gulf Crusade and repelling of orc invasions, to small battles over individual worlds like Taros campaign, Tau Fire Warriors proven themselves efficient and dedicated warriors of a Tau Empire. If you listened closely, you most likely noticed many striking similarities between the Fire Warriors and Clone Troopers. They have similar lifespan and speed in which they mature. They are raised from birth to be soldiers. Both have a rich warrior culture, and both of those forces face against an overwhelming enemy and despite all odds manage to score a victory. And while there are many similarities, there are also striking differences. What Kaminoans created by artificially tampering with DNA of Jango Fett, Tau achieved by centuries of controlled reproduction. Clones can be found not only as troopers on the ground, but also in the void as pilots or crew of a Venator. Some clones were even taking care of logistics or maintenance. This isn't true for Firecast. Fire Warriors are ground troops only. Void Warfare belongs to the Aircast, when engineering and logistics are handled by the Earthcast. The Clone Troopers come from Kamino and Kamino alone, when the Firecast can be found on all worlds of the Tau Empire. Clones are slaves, property of a republic. They have no rights, no way to influence their own destiny or be part of real decision-making on the highest levels of power. Fire Warriors are citizens of the Tau Empire. They have families, bloodlines, they can retire and rest after their service is done. They can be active in politics as representatives of their caste on Elemental Council. Sure, the Ethereals, as a ruling caste, have the final say, but Fire Warriors do have a voice on the council. The same can be said about the clones. The clones see themselves as expendable, when Fire Warriors, while ready to sacrifice themselves in the name of a greater good, won't do so recklessly. And most importantly of all, the clone army was intentionally created by the Sith, an army that could serve the Republic and face against the droid army of separatists, just as the Sith controlled both sides of the conflict from the shadows. A conflict which outcome was decided before the war even began. A great, bloody spectacle created so that Sith could destroy the Jedi and become the rulers of the galaxy. The clones fought in a war that lasted 3 years, after which they were discarded and decommissioned. Some retired, some joined the rebellion, many continued their service in the new Stormtrooper Corps as either elites or trainers for their replacements. Fire Warriors are an ancient clan of the Tau, with around 6,000 years of history behind them. They served the Tau Empire for untold generations and faced against the horrors of the Milky Way galaxy. The wars the Firecast experienced, against the Orcs, against the Imperium, against the Eldar, Drukhari, Tyranids, Necrons, and even forces of chaos? Those were real wars. No bloody spectacles. There was no great puppeteer here, no third hidden party that decided the outcome of any given war before it started. Please don't get me wrong, Fire Warriors are not Mandalorians, and they don't have as long of history as this truly ancient warrior culture. But the bitter truth is, clones aren't Mandalorians either. They are spiritual successors at best, and twisted copies at worst. Literally twisted in genetic sense. Clones were specially trained to fight against the droid army, and we see it, both in canon and legends, that when faced against non-droid army, they struggle, be it against Ambaran militia in canon, or Jabim nationalists in legends. The Fire Warriors are trained to fight against dozens of different enemies, and what is also worth to mention, they are trained to fight against non-Tau. In legends especially, clones' distaste for non-clone soldiers was quite visible. And while the Clone Wars series did their best to retcon this fact, it's a rare sight indeed when the clones actively fight alongside non-clone military. The Fire Warriors are expected to fight alongside their allies, be it vicious, cannibalistic Kroot, insectoid Vespid stingwings, or tradition-obsessed Tarelians. They are trained to utilize the strengths of their allies, where they themselves might be lacking. Ugh. Yes. That's probably the biggest difference of them all. At least in mentality between the Fire Warriors and Clone Troopers. The clones were raised with paradoxical belief that they are both elite soldiers of a republic, reflection of legendary Mandalorians, and expendable troops that must throw their lives away if it means accomplishing the mission. The Fire Warriors were raised with humility to understand their own weaknesses. For all their training against all manner of foes, harsh lessons are beaten into them on a regular basis. To be mindful of pride, so that it wouldn't blind them. To be mindful of rage, to not be carried away. To be mindful of duty, be ready to give their lives for the greater cause, but also to value their own lives and not throw them away recklessly. To be respectful to their allies as they accomplish things they cannot. And most importantly of all, to be mindful of the enemy and to not underestimate them. It's true that they don't always live up to those lessons, but when they do, there are few threats they can't overcome. With all that in mind, let's compare them directly and see who comes on top, shall we? We will compare Clone Troopers and Fire Warriors looking at a few categories. Physical advantages. As in this comparison, soldiers are of different species, and their physical characteristics should be analyzed. Mindset. What is the mindset of a soldier when going into battle? Training. How well they are trained, against what enemies, and in what environments. Personal equipment. What any soldier can be expected to be equipped with on the battlefield. Support equipment. What any soldier can expect to be available in terms of medicine, explosives, and gadgets. Doctrine. How soldiers operate on the ground and coordinate with other elements of their army. Physical advantages. This one is simple. The win goes to Clone Troopers. It's a running gag that Tau are physically weaker than humans. That's one of the reasons why they don't try to fight humans in melee combat, because they know they will lose. With Jango Fett being basically the pinnacle of what mortal human could wish to be, it seems like an easy win, right? You would think so. But Tau do have a massive advantage over humans. More specifically, sleep. A human usually requires between 6 to 8 hours of sleep every 24 hours. That's our biology, and as far as I know, outside of training and forcing themselves not to sleep, the clones need a similar period of rest and sleep to operate efficiently. Tau Tau require only half of that time. Taking it directly from a book, Farsight, Crisis of Faith by Phil Kelly, a Tau day, or Rota, is 15 hours long. Rota is broken down into 10 decks, so each deck is around 1.5 hours. And Tau on average need between 1 to 2 decks of sleep per Rota. So if we extend it to 24-hour cycle, the Tau would rest around 3.6 hours within 24-hour cycle. The fact how little time Tau need to rest can't be ignored. The Tau need only around half the time of rest compared to their clone counterparts. They can maintain 100% efficiency with far less sleep, and clones, even with their impressive training, would suffer if they tried to match them. However, for the sake of argument, and to not look biased, humans are overall physically superior to the Tau, so win goes to the clone troopers. Mindset. This might surprise some people, but I am inclined to give a win to Fire Warriors here. And the reason why is very simple. The mindsets of Fire Warriors and Clone Troopers are extremely similar. They both fight for something greater than themselves. They both see themselves as part of a greater machine, and both of them are ready to sacrifice themselves in the name of their faction. Here is a big difference. Fire Warriors actually have proper instinct of self-preservation, when clones see themselves as expendable to the point of being almost suicidal in terms of how recklessly they approach the goal of finishing the mission. And you might think that a soldier that is ready to give their lives to accomplish their mission is an advantage, and in critical situation this can prove to be a decisive factor. But this mindset extends to non-critical situations as well. There is reason why clones don't question Jedi orders to charge the droid army in the Battle of Geonosis. Their goal was to destroy the enemy, and were so committed to accomplish this task, they didn't even use bloody cover. In the Clone Wars series, we see this happening again and again. Clones stepping out of cover just to have a better shot at the enemy, leading to their own deaths. This mindset of being expendable is a massive flaw, an intentional flaw from my point of view. Clones are extremely expensive and elite soldiers in terms of training they went through, but are reckless with their lives because Kaminoans want them to die so that more clones could be sold to the Republic. Like any company, Kaminoan cloners didn't make clones to stand the test of time. They have to die to force the Republic to buy more clones and make Kaminoans more money. Fire Warriors share clones' readiness to sacrifice themselves, but they won't sell their lives cheaply or recklessly. Each Fire Warriors is around a decade of investment at least. It would be really stupid to simply throw them at the enemy and expect good results. It's also worth to mention one important thing. If you lose enough soldiers to be combat ineffective in order to accomplish your mission, that's called Pyrrhic victory, and it doesn't bode well for your next battle. Not to mention that intelligent enemy can manipulate clones into throwing their lives away to accomplish an objective or secure a target that was staged exactly for the purpose of clones recklessly killing themselves. Side note, the Tau are superb at doing exactly that. They managed to manipulate not only the Imperial Guard, but even the mighty Angels of Death, Space Marines, to charge straight into a kill zone. If they manage to fool Adeptus Astartes, they can fool clones. That's why I give a victory to Fire Warriors here, because they aren't reckless with their own lives. Training. And here I'm conflicted, because it's either Tau victory by a small margin, or a tie. For the sake of not making it sound like I'm too biased, let's say it's a tie. Don't get me wrong, clone troopers are very well trained, but they were trained specifically to fight against droids. We can see it in the Clone Wars TV series and Republic Commando game. Sure, they have simulations, and some pieces of lore show them training in simulation domes similar to combat domes of the Tau, but being restricted to Kamino limits their potential. Not to mention that the galaxy was mostly in peace for 1000 years. Mercenaries and bounty hunters can teach them how to be good warriors in personal combat, but not in ground battles that span entire star systems, simply because they don't have experience in fighting those kind of wars. Tau have the advantage of having not only combat domes where they face against cybernetic imitations of their enemies, but also a chance to actually travel to different worlds and train in different environments. Not to mention having access to veterans who faced against numerous enemies of a greater good and learn from them directly. Hell, I'm sure the Tau Empire transformed some moon or maybe even a planet into one massive training facility. And you might think that I'm talking in hyperbole, but I'm not. See this? This is Tinekla. It was a crystal world that was almost transparent. The Earthcast transformed it into a giant polyhedron-shaped gem, because they thought it would look pretty and would be a fun challenge. Let me repeat that. The Tau transformed an entire planet into a polyhedron-shaped gem, because they thought it would be a neat thing to do. Now please, try to tell me that some mad Earthcast didn't create a literal Jurassic World Firecast training facility, simply because it would be a fun challenge. I'm not even mentioning the fact that Tau are actually trained to work alongside non-Tau troops. They are expected to interact and integrate with non-Tau units. Something that clone troopers aren't that good at. But for the sake of argument, let's say that with Mandalorian rigorous training, the clones and Fire Warriors are about on the same level. Personal equipment. Clear victory to the Tau. No questions asked. Fire Warriors' personal equipment is recognized to be of high quality by Warhammer 40k standards. The universe where there is only war. Pulse rifles are designed anti-armor weapon that makes Space Marines uncomfortable. They have rail rifles that can one-shot Space Marine in Terminator armor, and ion rifles that can punch holes through heavy infantry and light armored vehicles. Even better, basically every Tau weapon have a gyroscope that is there to help in aiming and reducing effects of trembling hands. Tau have not only aim assist inside their helmets, but they have built-in technology inside their very weapons. Clones might have aim assist in their helmets, but they sure don't have one inside their blasters. Fire Warrior combat armor is surprisingly resistant, far more resistant than the clone armor, of that I'm sure. Combat armor is usually compared to so-called carapace armor used by the Imperium of Man. Carapace armor is given to officers and elite soldiers of the Imperium. So what Imperium of Man considers to be equipment for the elite soldiers is standard issued armor for the Tau. Don't get me wrong, no armor is impenetrable, but Tau combat armor is pretty tough. Additionally, we actually see Fire Warriors shrug off direct hits when most clones fall either dead or are knocked out after getting shot. And, you know, the Tau actually repaint their armor to match their surroundings, when clones are usually running around in bright white armor, with very few exceptions. I guess mercenaries taught them that style alone would save them from blaster fire. It doesn't, but hey, at least they look cool when they are getting blasted. Support equipment. For the most part, Fire Warriors get a win. The clones have a massive advantage in medicine thanks to Bacta, which is basically a magic healing drug. Tau have some good medicine, but Bacta is simply superior to anything they have. So clones get a win with medicine, but this is not the only thing that a soldier needs on the ground. In terms of explosives, both sides have similar abilities to blow stuff up. Tau usually prefer using photon grenades that are basically flashbangs, but they are known to use pulse or plasma grenades and fusion charges, so with clones having thermal detonators, which are quite impressive, and EMP grenades, I'd give them a tie in terms of explosives. And lastly, the reason the Tau get a win here. Drones. The clone troopers simply don't have equivalent to that. Fire Warrior teams can be deployed with drone support. Gun drones, heavy gun drones, missile drones and recon drones can boost firepower of a fire team. Flank their enemies, scout ahead, even shield the Fire Warriors with their own bodies. But why sacrifice a drone if you can deploy an actual shield drone? Suddenly, you need far more firepower to bring down a simple squad of Fire Warriors. Marker drones can use marker lights to help with targeting the enemies and grant additional aim assist to Fire Warriors. Acceleration drones boost the firepower of each gun in the squad. Grav inhibitor drones can release a gravitational wave that stops enemy charge in their tracks. And sniper drones can turn heads of enemy commanders into a distant memory. And all of that is just a tip of the iceberg, because there are engineering drones, medic drones, supply drones, stealth drones, suicide drones, and so on. Tau have drones for every occasion. It's not in the lore, but I'm sure that some eccentric Earthcast attached a baseball bat to one with a string so it could fight in melee combat. Clones don't have that. They don't have droids that actively help them during combat. They are delegated to help with healing or resupply at best. In Legends, clones did have some kind of small hovering ball that helped them scan and map out surroundings, but that's about it, and Tau drones can do the same and most likely be better at it. If we have a combat scenario of a single squad of clones firing on a single squad of Fire Warriors, there is a chance that Fire Warriors have a shield drone, a marker drone, a sniper drone, and a squadron of gun drones as their direct support. Shield drone protects them, marker drones boost their aim, a sniper drones take the head of the clone sergeant, and as the clone squad is pinned down behind cover, wondering what to do, the squadron of gun drones flanks them and guns them down from above. Clones simply don't have an answer to drones, outside of deploying more soldiers and to recklessly waste their lives trying to secure enemy position, when the Tau focus on actually killing the enemy, rather than keeping control over some random hill or pile of rubble. Doctrine. Last category on the list. And here I'm of two mindsets. If we look at clone troopers from early Clone Wars, Tau get a clean, easy win. Why? Because early war doctrine was complete shite. Kaminoans created a doctrine where coordination was key, as was the idea that different types of clone units would complement each other. Truly, a genius doctrine. The problem is, no plan survives contact with the enemy, and Kaminoans totally ignored the environments and scenarios where clones wouldn't be able to deploy all of their assets on the ground or utilize their strength to 100%. Surprisingly, Kaminoans who are many things, but not warriors, aren't really that good at creating a military doctrine. There is a reason why almost immediately Jedi implemented massive changes into Grand Army of the Republic doctrine, trying to actually utilize clones' strengths. It didn't always work out, because Jedi at the time were about as good in waging war as Kaminoans, but with time they got better. Not by much, but there was progress. With late war doctrine, where Grand Army of the Republic put far more importance on small unit tactics, mobility and adaptability, I could accept clones getting a tie with a Tau. But that's in the best case scenario. In more cases, Tau would still win. And you might think that I'm full of shit, but please, let me explain. Everything Fire Warriors have access to, their armor, their guns, their drones, vehicles, battlesuits and transports, is connected to their philosophy of warfare and their doctrine. The Republic needed 3 years to figure out that small units are effective in combat and had to transform and adapt their doctrine, but had to keep most of equipment that didn't always fit this new strategy. Tau don't have that problem. The same goes for the mindset of achieving goals and objectives. When clones would be obsessed with achieving objectives like capture of a city at all costs, like during the Battle of Umbara, the Fire Warriors doctrine dictates to focus on killing the enemy, not holding ground. Why? Because holding ground is far easier when their enemy is dead. Old Fire Warrior saying goes, "Good warrior strikes fast, but retreats faster." And while the Republic started to use similar idea in later part of the Clone Wars, the Tau have actual vehicles and equipment that complements this way of waging war. Another thing is, even when broken, a sword may still cut. It is within Tau mindset that even if some of their assets aren't available or are destroyed, they can adapt to given battlefield conditions and achieve their goals. They can prove to be very creative and cunning, if given a chance. Even if we look at the doctrine of how squads operate, the clones are usually deployed in 10-man squads with 9 troopers and a sergeant. The Tau fire teams are between 6 to 12 troops. Smaller teams are reserved for scouts or units equipped with special weapons. A standard Fire Warrior team consists of 12 warriors, with one of them being Shasui, an equivalent to sergeant. So if we take a standard clone trooper squad and standard Fire Warrior team, the Tau gets 2 more soldiers, not to mention of what drones they have as support. In battle, even 2 more rifles can be all the difference that decide who is last one standing. If we look at the higher level of organization, it doesn't look good, because when above a clone trooper squad is a clone platoon, but will count 41 soldiers and have access to 1 ATTE as transport at the best of times, above a Fire Warrior team is a cadre. A cadre is the most important unit in Tau doctrine, and on this level are already utilizing combined arms warfare and can operate completely independently of other units. In a way, cadre is equivalent to a company. Tau don't really have an equivalent of platoon. A standard hunter cadre counts around 70 soldiers, 3 Fire Warrior teams for standard infantry line, 36 soldiers total, 2 Crude Warrior teams for close range and melee combat, 20 soldiers total, 6 Vespid, 8 Pathfinders with Devilfish transport and 3 Piranhas for scouting and skirmish, a sniper team, 2 broadsides, battlesuits and hammerhead gunship for heavy support, a crisis battlesuit team for fast attack and command team in crisis suits. Each cadre can be deployed with significant drone support and additional vehicles. Each Fire Warrior and Crude teams can get their own Devilfish transport. A Hunter cadre is a unit that is around half the size of what most people would consider a company, but they have enough firepower to match one. If infantry clone company is deployed to face against Hunter cadre, they won't win. They will die. A unit with only infantry will not be able to challenge the firepower that Hammerhead and Broadsides can provide, nor match the speed of Piranhas and Devilfish. The Republic would need to deploy a full clone company with armored support to have hope of actually scoring a victory. 4 platoons, each with ATTE for transport and fire support. Hell, let's make it so that 2 ATTEs have AT-RTs for recon and the other pair has speeders. And then, when Tau are outnumbered 2 to 1, clone troopers can feel relatively confident in achieving victory. That is, assuming that the Tau will stand still. But they won't. Because, as I mentioned before, Tau usually don't hold ground. Not unless they are protecting some extremely important facility. And in that scenario, a specialized defensive cadre would be deployed, not a hunter cadre. But for the sake of this example, let's stick with a hunter cadre. If they can, they give ground and run circles around their enemy, utilizing their speed, agility, and superior range. In a scenario where both units are on the move, Fire Warriors would usually win. A clone company with armored support simply has no way to keep up with them, not unless they deploy special vehicles like Saber-class fighter tanks, and those weren't that common sight during the Clone Wars. So clones are stuck with ATTE that is too slow to keep up with Devilfish or Hammerheads. AT-RTs and speeders would be ripped apart by Piranhas. ATTEs would be crippled or destroyed by precise shots from Hammerhead and Broadsides rail cannons. And when clone troopers will find themselves without armored support, we are back at the square one where they can be slaughtered wholesale. I know that I said that I won't talk about vehicles and I won't go into details, but you must realize that Hunter cadre of the Tau is far more mobile than a clone company with armored support. There is no comparison here. Hunter cadre can run circles around the clones as if it was nothing. They do it when facing Imperial Guard, Orcs, and even Space Marines. The clones aren't really that much of a challenge in comparison to some of the foes that Fire Warriors faced in grimdark Milky Way galaxy. On top of all that, I need to point out one little thing. The Tau Empire is considered the weakest faction in Warhammer 40k, and many see them as the good guys. But that doesn't mean they can't be grimdark. In a story, Taker of Heads by Ian St. Martin, a squad of space marines are sent to a jungle planet where a regiment of Imperial Guard was being harassed by the Tau. The day they arrive, a single wounded guardsman stumbles out of the jungle and goes to the gate begging to be saved. His comrades call for a medic and transport to take him to a field hospital. The moment he is put inside a Chimera APC, he explodes. Because Tau captured him, implanted a bomb inside his body and let him escape back to base. And just as he reached his destination, thinking he was saved, they blew him up alongside the entire gatehouse and everyone near it. The rest of the story shows Tau using straight-up Vietcong traps and terror tactics, wiping out all guardsmen sent their way and most of the space marines. To be fair, they were defeated in the end, but only one Astartes returned to base. Yes, the Imperium achieved a victory, but at what cost? Was it worth it? This wasn't even a hunter cadre, but a smaller, specialized one, mostly made of pathfinders and Kroot, with plenty of drone support. Within a week, since Astartes depart the system and the guard will feel safe, Tau can deploy another cadre in the same region and continue their work. Fire warriors are pragmatic warriors. If terror tactics are the most efficient way to deal with the enemy, they will use them. They do not fear using dirty tactics. They prefer to fight with honor, but this isn't a requirement. I want you to think about it. A full regiment of Imperial Guard, thousands of well-trained soldiers of the Imperium were driven to paranoia and straight-up panic by a few dozen of enemy combatants. Soldiers going on patrol were barely holding to their own sanity, uncertain when they will be shot or fall into some deadly trap. Tau taking page from Predator and hunting them as if it was some kind of sport. The guard did their best. They burned out the jungle around their base, set up sniper nests, sent patrols. They had artillery units ready to blast any Xenos positions they could spot. They were reducing entire sections of the jungle to ruin with artillery fire. They were calling for air forces to drop napalm and bombs where they thought Xenos were hiding. And all of that wasn't enough. They had to call upon Space Marines to score the smallest of victories that wouldn't last. Don't get me wrong. Clone troopers can do some horrific stuff, and they don't fear getting their hands dirty. But they were trained to fight against an enemy who wouldn't feel fear, and so they lack creativity of how to use it as a weapon. So, let's get to a final verdict. Physical advantages? Clone troopers. Mindset? Fire warriors. Training? TIE. Personal equipment? Fire warriors. Support equipment? Fire warriors. Doctrine? Fire warriors or a TIE in best case scenario. Fire warriors of the Tau Empire, even while being the troops of the weakest of 40k factions, are overall better soldiers than the clones. All of the genetic legacy of Jango Fett won't be enough in this contest. Because unlike clones, fire warriors know they can be not only outnumbered, not only outgunned, but outmatched by their enemies. But even in defeat, they can make their enemy bleed. This is one of the reasons why Tau Empire survived in Warhammer 40k Galaxy. Because everyone understands that even if they manage to defeat the Tau Empire, and they can, the cost of achieving that would be too great. The Grand Army of the Republic and clones of Camino would learn the same harsh lesson if they faced against them. But now I want to hear your opinion. Do you agree with my assessment of strengths and weaknesses of both sides? Do you think that one of the categories should be a clear win to someone else? Do you want me to expand upon the subject of comparing Tau Empire military to the Grand Army of the Republic? Tell me in the comments. If you liked this video, leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell, the whole shtick. You know what to do. Now, my dear listeners, remember, wherever you are, whatever you do, try to enjoy yourself while you can. I wish you most heretical day. Ta-ta!